Welcome to Benefits Broker Boost, the show that gives employee benefits brokers practical strategies to grow, scale, and streamline their business. Presented by Plansight, where innovation meets efficiency in employee benefits. Now, let's dive in.
Welcome to our first episode of Benefits Broker Boost. My name's Adam Smith. I'm the CMO here at Plansight, and I'm joined by Weston Lunsford, the CEO here at Plansight. Weston, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Excited to get this thing kicked off.
Yeah, I'm excited. We've been talking about this for a while, so wanted to have you on, talk through why we're doing this podcast, and then get into how that aligns with our vision as a company, things that we're trying to solve as a company, and tie those two together. Right? When I reach out to people and ask them to be on the podcast and let them know, hey, here's our philosophy, things that we're trying to solve with this podcast, it goes right hand in hand with what we're doing at Plansight. So I'll start this off. We want everyone that watches an episode of Benefits Broker Boost to walk away with something that they can practically apply to grow their business, whether that's a new marketing strategy or a new technology implementation. So let's start with the why. Why did we feel like this was the right time to launch a podcast for employee benefits brokers and for agencies?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And as you mentioned, Adam, we've been talking about it for a little while. I think education is critical, and having the ability to acquire information and knowledge is really important, but then also having a strategic plan on how to apply that knowledge you gain. That's what really separates people from having a lot of information to really intelligent people. And we want to create intelligent agencies out there. Honestly, today, I feel like there's never been more pressure on benefit brokers than ever before. I mentioned this in a few different podcasts and also on LinkedIn posts that medical premiums are skyrocketing. We've all seen this. And it's not just medical, it's other benefits as well. But employers, and even us as an employer, we're demanding more value from our benefit brokers. And employees, our staff, they're expecting more. They're expecting better comprehensive plans with lower costs because it's extremely expensive out there to get healthcare. And brokers have to be more creative than ever before. And so they've got to be focusing on balancing affordability with comprehensive coverages. And the truth is there is better ways to manage renewals and shop the market than just delivering results that come to you. And that's why I think we're really putting this podcast together. It's about giving brokers an advantage, new ideas, tools, real stories from peers who are really finding successes in an increasingly complex environment today.
Yeah, I love that. So we say, Plansight is streamlining the RFP process in ways that no one else is streamlining the RFP process, right?
Right.
And we want to have people see that, but we also want to give them other ways that they can streamline their business, right? So we're looking at when a broker watches an episode of Benefits Broker Boost, that we want them to walk away with a new marketing strategy, a new technology implementation that they can use to make their processes easier, new operational efficiencies that they can gain. Those are the goals of this podcast. And we really want people that are doing things in really cool ways to be on here. We've got some really cool episodes already lined up that'll bring a lot of that.
Along with that, I think Plansight really, if you think about the technology you brought up, we eliminate manual work through technology. And this podcast, in my mind, and I know in your mind, your heart of this, you want to do the same thing just through knowledge. Taking the insights we've gained from hundreds of agencies, those best practices, the operational breakthroughs, and we're wanting to share them in a way that anyone can actually learn from and take actionable steps with. Think of it as your workflow automation of your mindset. Plansight definitely has technology that deals with your automation of those processes, but this podcast should be a workflow automation of your mindset. We're helping brokers modernize how they think, not just how they work.
I love that. Okay. So you alluded to this a little bit already in the first answer, but as you look at the market today, you've owned multiple businesses. You've been on the business side of dealing with brokers, and now you're on the software side of providing to brokers. What are the biggest challenges that brokers and agencies are facing right now that inspired us to create Plansight?
As an employer, I would have answered this differently, but now being inside the world of the benefits industry for the last few years, I've really seen and come to learn that most benefit brokers are just operating on outdated technology that forces their team members or to even hire team members to do repetitive manual work, such as dealing with spreadsheets and rekeying in data from one application to another application, comparing PDFs line by line and looking for these inclusions and exclusions of plans. And it also relies heavily on institutional knowledge. I mean, Adam, I wasn't from this industry before. And so the amount of information I had to learn, it's like taking a new dictionary and trying to gain all this vocabulary and learn what it means. And that means they have to hire team members with some really deep experience to manage their processes effectively. And it's just not very scalable. We built Plansight, and now this podcast that we're kicking off at this moment to really help brokers, break out of that cycle. Technology should be handled. It should be able to handle most of this administrative work, this repetitive work, so people can really focus on what really drives value, the strategy and the creativity and these client relationships. And I feel like the biggest struggle that brokers are dealing with is they're stuck in these old archaic processes of getting the work done.
Yeah. So combining your first two answers, you mentioned, brokers are having to get more strategic, employers are demanding more of the brokers, and we know rates are going up. Half of what you hear on LinkedIn, that our rates went up by. I had a friend that I was talking to the other day who owns two businesses. He said one of his businesses went up by 58%. And that requires a lot of strategy to either justify that or to come up with something creative that's going to make it so that's not the case for the employer. You need technology that's taking out all the redundancies, that's making that process easier so you can be that strategist with the employers. So great answers. That combination is really the goal of this podcast and the goal of Plansight. So
we hope.
Our goal is to show brokers how they can grow their business and scale more efficiently and to operationalize growth. Why are those three themes so central, not just to this podcast, but to our mission as a company?
Growth, scalability, and operational efficiency. Is that what you said? Well, that aligns a lot with our mission. Everything we do is anchored around in helping brokers win, whether that's retaining clients, expanding their relationship with their existing clients, or really differentiating themselves in this crowded market that seems to be out there today. And winning looks like being seen. To us, it's being seen as a strategic partner, not just as a renewal processor. And I think that that's important for every broker to really evaluate that. Do my clients see me as this strategic partner and not just someone who handles my benefit renewals each year? It means bringing some data-driven insights and efficiency and creativity to every client conversation. So our technology and this podcast, it exists to help agencies operationalize that type of success. We want you to clearly be defined by your customers and the prospects you're seeking to become your customers as a strategic partner in their benefits world.
Yeah, that's exactly how I picture this as well. Like I said, we've got quite a few people lined up already. We've got people that are top producers at big agencies that have the sales process completely dialed, right? They're going to come in and talk about their sales processes, right? So that would be bettering processes internally. We've got people that are utilizing technology in really, really cool ways. We've got COOs that are going to be on here talking about how they've operationalized efficiencies into their agencies. We've got people that go and teach some of the biggest brokers in the country how to do social media marketing. We've got those types of people lined up. So we've got kind of everything from acquiring a new client, getting the client's interest, I guess, then getting them to become a client, and then from once they become a client into operationalizing efficiencies to be that strategic partner for the client.
Right. I think you've done a great job, Adam, of just looking for this wide mix of voices. And you mentioned these larger broker firms. And while we'll have large national firms speaking about some of their processes and systems, and even regional brokers or even boutique agencies with successes, some of these will be Plansight users. Some of them have never used Plansight before. But I think that we're also looking and finding and searching to spotlight innovators out there and the self-funding and alternative funding models. And technology partners who are reshaping this market. Our goal, as we mentioned a couple times here, is to really explore what's working, what's changing, and how brokers can turn those trends into practical advantages for their brokerages. If it helps a broker deliver better outcomes and run smarter operations, we're going to be talking about it here on this podcast.
Yep. And that's one thing I want to highlight is this is going to be technology agnostic, right? Yes, we are a technology company and we provide a service that we think is phenomenal, but a lot of the guests that we'll have on are non-Plansight users. They maybe use solutions that do different things than what Plansight does. They're going to be on basically any sort of technology, but we want to know how that technology is helping the brokers become more efficient and build their book of business better. So awesome. Okay. So Weston, I've heard you talk a lot about creating repeatable, scalable processes inside agencies, right? As we build out Plansight to be something that is process driven, that is repeatable, that's scalable. I've heard you talk about this a lot. What are a couple of things that you think top performing agencies are doing right now that other agencies could learn from? So let's go through how we're going to unpack those types of things on the show as well.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I've been amazed in interacting with several different agencies, and I've seen some where they have really good processes and systems. And then I've seen some where they really are kind of all over the world and they allow individual reps to kind of control the process and system for their book of business. And some of the best run agencies that I've come across, Adam, have really disciplined, repeatable systems for a very specific element of their business. So lots of different elements, but one that I've been most fascinated with some of the most successful brokerages out there is their systems around client engagement. And what I mean by that, I'll give you an example of a brokerage I'm thinking about, but after each renewal, they conduct what they call a post-renewal review. And in that thing, they're finding out what worked well, what didn't work well, how could they have improved? And they're taking those notes so that they can use that for the next renewal and making sure they're documenting what they need to change. They then, that same agency then holds what they call a mid-year check-in. And here they're looking for things that the client is or is not satisfied when it comes to their carrier engagement. Do they like how their carriers are responding to the team members? Are they responsive? Are their networks okay? But they're taking notes about everything in regard to the carrier, since now it's been about 6 months since these employees have been on these plans. And then 4 to 5 months before the renewal, which is shortly after this mid-year check-in, they're already planning and identifying the needs and exploring new market options for their clients. They're keeping their clients well informed that they're actively engaged in this at this time. And so to me, I think one of the biggest takeaways that I have from agencies that are really growing their book of business they're not winging it. They've turned renewal management into a process that runs like clockwork, and it shows up in their growth. It shows up in the retention. And a lot of this is around just their system around client engagement. How are they interacting with their clients throughout the year?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that same thing as I've talked to a lot of different brokers, and it's becoming more and more vital as consolidation happens, right? When you consolidate 15 different agencies into one, as you acquire, merge, those types of things, and you've got processes that are not extremely tight and well defined, you start to get chaos.
At some point, every boutique broker is looking for some form of exit. So the more systems and processes you have dialed in, the higher your valuation is going to be. And it's important that you learn some of these techniques and strategies that we'll be talking about throughout this podcast, so that you can start applying those things, so that when it does come time for you to consider a roll-up or a sell or a transaction of any sort, that you're getting the most value out of your brokerage.
Yep. That leads into the next question pretty well. I would say the industry's in a moment or a position of transformation, right? I would say technology as a whole is kind of at an influx point where you've got AI introducing into every facet of a business, right? You can't go on LinkedIn without seeing 400 people trying to get you to comment GPT on their posts so that you can get their new AI playbook, right? It's everywhere. We're at an inflection point. AI is coming in for some brokers. We've got shrinking margins. We've got more expensive plans coming into place, carrier complexity. And you mentioned this one as well. Expectations are increasing from broker clients. Because their premiums are going up, they want more from the broker. So there's this kind of transformation.
Right.
What do you see happening over the next 5 years that from all of these things, how do you see this kind of changing the industry over the next 5 to 10 years?
Man, it's a really good question. It gets asked a lot. I've been on a handful of podcasts and this similar question is asked. So it's definitely something that the market and I think any industry is really thinking about, especially with the AI initiatives and how fast it's actually advancing. I think that technology is absolutely changing how brokers are operating today and will have completely changed how they operate here within the next 5 years. AI and automation are removing repetitive, low value tasks. It's allowing brokers who embrace it to focus more on what we've talked about here. And you just mentioned again, but strategy and creativity and client outcomes. And I think that that's so critical that we're utilizing technology to allow us to free up more capital to apply to that type of spend around strategy and creativity. And ultimately, Adam, I said it again, but these client outcomes. Those who embrace this shift of adopting this type of technology will see their margins expand, as you mentioned, and their teams become more effective. We're not replacing their teams. Technology is trying to make their teams more effective. And those who resist it are going to risk falling behind. I don't know if it's going to really kill their business, but they're definitely not going to be advancing as fast as those who are embracing it. So the role of the broker, it's absolutely evolving from a data manager type role to really a strategic consultant. And some brokers have already been running with this. And that's a massive opportunity to all those brokers who are really willing to dig in and to adapt. It does require change, and sometimes change is hard at first, but usually when you make those changes, you're going to see big dividends down the road.
I was watching another podcast with a guest that we're going to have on in the near future, trains a lot of different brokers. And he was talking to the podcast host and said, the minute that one of your clients comes to you and says, why haven't you told us about this that another broker has? You're on the defense and you're potentially going to lose that account. You have to be proactive. You have to have that relationship. They have to know that you're thinking about them, thinking about ways that you can get them better outcomes.
And brokers have to find the time to be able to think about these.
Exactly. And that's what the technology is going to do, right? That technology is going to give them the additional time that they don't have to go and do all of these things manually and spend their time doing those things. Now they can be that, hey, just touching base, letting you know we're doing this for you. We're working on this, making sure we're putting you in the best situation possible. Technology is going to transform the way that this industry works, and it's going to transform it in a way that lets brokers have the brokers that use it correctly will be able to have better relationships with their customers and their clients and retain those clients better because they are being higher touch. So if a broker gives us 30 minutes of their time, that's roughly what these episodes are going to turn out to be. Some will be a little bit longer.
We've only got 9 minutes left if we're sticking at 30 minutes.
Yeah, we'll be there. We'll be there. But if a broker gives us 30 minutes of their time, what do you hope they walk away with each time they watch an episode of Benefits Broker Boost?
Well, not to just copy you, Adam, but I really liked what you said at the very beginning of this. And to me, it's something immediate, actionable. So it could be a new client engagement tactic or a workflow improvement or a product idea that opens a door to new revenue with your existing clients. I'm hoping that when you watch an episode that it sparks some real conversations inside agencies, something that leaders, whoever is listening to the podcast, can take into their next team meeting and say, hey, let's try this, or how do we implement this? If we can help even one broker, run more efficiently or grow faster, to me, that's a win for the podcast.
Yeah, I think if I look at the podcasts that I listen to regularly, and there are a couple, there's almost always something in each episode that if I'm looking for it and trying to do it, I can take and implement to a goal that I'm trying to work on, right? That's the podcast I listen to is because of a goal that I'm trying to work on. They're giving me actionable things that if I'm interested in the outcome that they're talking about, that's something that I can go and apply. That's my goal with this podcast, is that I get someone on that's doing something interesting, that's growing in meaningful ways, that's scaling meaningfully using technology, that when someone watches this, they walk away with something that, hey, if that's something I'm trying to accomplish, if I'm trying to get more employers, if I'm trying to get more products at each employer, if I'm trying, whatever the goal is of that person, that they walk away with something that's actionable that they can do as soon as they're done.
Yeah, and I think that that's going to be your goal too, as you're interviewing people, is getting those okay, so now what? What's the actionable thing someone can do? And the reality is you may hear someone's actionable item, which is great, and you might be able to run with that. Or as you're listening, ideas spark in your mind and things that we didn't even talk about, but it's causing this mind to work and to create some strategy for you. We're just hoping at the end of each of these sessions that you're walking out with something that
Yeah.
better
Yeah.
tomorrow than you are today. That's the goal.
Exactly. And I'll have a policy on the podcast of no gatekeeping. If you talk about something, it's not like well, send me a message and I'll send you the playbook and you get entered into someone's marketing campaign for the rest of your life. That's not the
We don't
goal.
want that.
No, the goal is if I've got someone on, they're giving something, they've already got something that they're doing that's working, and they're giving some piece of advice that listeners can walk away with.
Awesome.
Last question here, keeping it under 30 minutes. As we kick this off, what is your message to broker agencies who are trying to grow but feel stuck in old processes or stuck because of market pressures? And what encouragements or challenges would you offer to them?
Okay, so here's the pressure for me then. I've got to give this one thing that someone can walk away with, right? If we're ending with this thing. So this is something I do over the years, I started out with a certified public accounting firm and did tons of business consulting with several mid to large size organizations, not necessarily in the healthcare, but different verticals, and then went into the software industry and focused in the healthcare world, and have a venture capital fund too, where I've got a dozen portfolio companies. And one of the first things that I'm always doing, well, first, let me back up, I guess. Let me say this, Adam, running an agency or even a book of business within an agency, but most of these brokers own their book of business. It's not easy. And it's not easy to win new business. It's not easy to retain business. Success here requires constant evaluation and reinvention. And that's no different than any business. And so if you feel stuck, I think that's the word you used.
Mhm.
And I would start by staking your claim. And what I mean by that is really define who you are. Why are you different? And what is the unique value that you bring your clients? You need to polish that statement, and then you need to live up to it. That's your position statement. That's what you stake your claim in the sand or in the field. It's your North Star. And every decision that you make in your business needs to go back to that claim. So for us, and I think you mentioned this early on too, Plansight, it's simple. We transform how brokers quote and renew benefits, automating workflows, eliminating errors, and integrating data into accelerating growth. That's our claim. That's what we stake. And we do a really good job on that. And every decision we make has to go back to, does it enable this or not? So what I would recommend that you do today is just take a minute and define yours. And then once you define it, write it down, share it with your entire team and your staff. Let them know this is who we are and what separates us from everyone else, and then live it. Don't settle for being the same as everyone else. And that's how you're going to turn really this pressure of feeling stuck or processes and the pressures that the market's bringing on into progress. Figure out what your claim is, and you might have to reevaluate that and restate that again with the new market that's going on today.
Yeah. I'd add on to that, and this is just from the marketing standpoint, is be loud about it. Make sure that people know that that's what you're doing, and be loud in as many places as you can about it, especially where your audience lives. Let's say that the claim that you stake is, I am the most strategic benefits broker in the country, right? Obviously, people will argue about that, but let's just say that that's the position that you're taking. I'm going to be your strategist. I'm going to be hands-on. I'm going to help you get the best for your business. And you need to be letting heads of HR, heads of finance, CEOs, whoever you're working with at the companies that you're working with, you need to be letting them hear that so that they have a reason to believe that you're different from.
Every team member needs to be repeating that. We take the most strategic approach when it comes to putting together affordable benefit packages for you and your employees. And if that is your stake claim, like you're saying, I'm telling you, if you say it over and over again, eventually you're going to have to start changing actions inside your organization to ensure that you become who that person is that you're staking, that you're making a claim about. And And that's going to make a big difference in just your motivation and your energy level as well. But you have to have that mission. That mission's got to be well defined.
I love it. And it is something that I see some people do really well. And it's something that I see some people not do as well on. And, I
We ask
mentioned,
every one of our clients, Adam, this question, like what makes you guys different? Why are you in the industry and what do you do for your clients? And some of them, like you said, we see some of our clients, they're amazing at it. And then others like, well, they don't really have an answer to it.
but what's funny, and this is an observation that I had in the industry we both came from, dentists are also trying to do this, right? They're trying to stake their claim. We got to see, we ran a data company for dental practices. So we got to see the behind the curtains of these people who had these position statements, and the ones who struggled to iterate what their position was, what made them different, what made them obvious choices someone should make. The ones who struggled there almost always struggled in business as well.
Yeah. They don't perform near as well as those who have a clear vision and what separates them from everyone else.
Yeah. So that's great advice. Well, I'm really, really excited about the podcast, Weston. Thanks for joining me. I know you're excited as well. It's a really big initiative that we've got. We as a company are trying to transform the industry in the way that people think about RFPs and the way that brokers are approaching the RFP process. And we hope that this podcast will also change the way that a lot of benefit brokers approach their business by getting the thought leaders. We've got a really, really exciting lineup already, but thought leaders in growth, thought leaders in technology, thought leaders in operations in here to really share with the entire industry as we get things going. So thanks for joining in. Hope you took something away of value, and we hope to see you next time.